He has a 1-1 count. That one's struck high. Left side. That one's going. That's right here off the ropes. You have to be kidding me. Fireworks. And here you go.
Welcome, everybody, into the IA Sports Studio. My name is Cade Nissen, and if you read the title, you're here to see my preseason Class 3A top pitching staffs to look out for. Now, if you haven't seen Class 4A, we've got the top 4A pitching staff and offenses on YouTube. Be sure to go check those out. We've got plenty of content coming. We're just weeks away from practice starting. Super pumped to get out to practices. Obviously, baseball is my passion. I'm really, really excited for this summer. We're going to take this to another level. So before we get started, we do have some announcements as I pull up my little sheet here. As I said, first practice is 2 weeks away. Super, super excited for that. New on Rockfin. It's stuff still coming out. We have our freshman phenoms out. We're working on sophomores, juniors, seniors. We're working on all those lists. We've got preseason all IA baseball teams in the early stages. Our rankers are going through, picking their first team, second team, third team, individual rankings for each position. Super pumped for that. We've got preseason team rankings that are currently live on there to see the top 15 to 16 teams in each class. Some of our rankers even did honorable mentions. So we're getting as many teams, as many athletes included as possible. Super excited to bring a ton of stuff to Rockfin this summer. Again, that's the number one way you can support us, is to head over to Rockfin and subscribe. You guys will get everything first there. And then anything else that's released to the public will be later. But Rockfin's the number one way to stay ahead of the game this summer. So appreciate all of you guys for subscribing that are. And if you aren't, be sure to check it out. Any questions, be sure to let me know. Our DMs are always open. 20 schools mentioned in this video. Yeah, I know. Top 10. I got the top 10 ranked. I've got 5 sleeper teams, and I've got 5 honorable mentions that just missed the top 10. So super, super excited to get into that. Let's get started, though. I got sleepers here. Now, these are teams that aren't in the top 10, not quite honorable mention. They're kind of the teams that were right around the 500 mark last year that return a ton of arms and that I'm kind of excited to see take a step forward this year. Starting with Sadell, 19 and 17 last year, but they returned some guys at the top of their rotation that I think could help boost them and get them to that 20-win mark this season. Ryan Van Houten, Brady Hicks, he's a star. He was on our freshman phenoms list. 40 innings, 1.23 ERA, 61 Ks. Van Houten led the team in innings. He brings back 49 and 2/3. This Sadell team overall brings back over 60% of their innings. Peyton Rumans is another guy. He'll be a senior this year, kind of leading the way. He brings back 35 innings, so big returners for Sadell. Another sleeper I have on my board is Lamar's. They were at 500 exactly last year at 17 and 17. 86% of those innings are back, including 3 guys with 35 or more innings in Braden Dreckman, Evan Pratt, and Aiden Hoag. They also bring back 3 other guys who return 20-plus innings. So this team at Lamar is going to be super deep. All these guys have very respectable ERAs, right around 4 or below, at least for the top 3 guys. Team ERA of 4.78 last year. I expect that to drop with all these returners. So Lamar is another sleeper team. As you can see, another one, Decorah. Now, not really talked about much this offseason on our platform, so I'll give them some love right now. 16 and 17 last year. How about 91% of the innings returning for Decorah, including 4 guys with 30-plus innings returning and 2 of them with 40-plus innings. So, when you return 2 guys who threw 40 innings last year, you've got something special cooking. This team had a 3.44 ERA last year, and I expect that to be right around the same. Landon Kunin and Brady Bonner. I apologize if I'm butchering those names. If I'm mispronouncing any of these names, be sure to drop in the comments. Let me know so that if we talk about them during the season, I can get it right. As much as I've been covering baseball, I can't know everything about every team, so I'm going to butcher some names. I do apologize, but hopefully you guys can stick with me. Fisher Tweeton and Caden Alstead also returned 30 innings for Decorah, so super excited for this team. The Vikings, again, 16 and 17 last year. I expect them to make a jump, and this pitching staff is going to be a big reason why. Another sleeper team I have is Creston, another team kind of around that 500 mark, a little below. 91% of their innings return, including 2 guys with 50-plus innings set to return on the bump. Cale Turner, he'll be a senior, and Parker Varner, he'll be a junior. Both those guys. Varner himself is bringing back 64 and a third innings. That is a ton of innings. Team ERA of 3.98 for Creston last year, and a good Hawkeye 10 conference. They're going to be competing with the likes of Lewis Central, Harlan, Kemper, St. Albert. Tons of good competition in that conference. And I look for these guys to take a big step. Dylan Hopker is another guy. He returns 47 and a third for Creston. My final sleeper team before we get to the honorable mentions is Clear Lake, the Lions. 13-13 last year, and they return the most innings, or the most percentage of their innings from last year. 95% of their innings are back. 96% of their strikeouts. They don't lose hardly anything on the mound. Led by Andrew Theis. He threw 58 and 2/3 last year. He'll be the bona fide ace. He had 91 strikeouts last year, 2.39 ERA, and a whip below 1. That is microscopic. Again, this team is returning 96% of their strikeouts. Hudson Carney, Joshua Munson, both return 20 innings as well for Clear Lake. So I'm excited to keep tabs on the Lions this year and see what kind of improvements they can make. But those are your 5 sleeper teams. I know I said top 10, but I want to include as many teams as possible. When I was going through Class 3A, I didn't even look at the rankings, our preseason team rankings. I just went team by team, clicked on each team, saw what innings are bringing back, and made my list off of that because I didn't want a preseason team ranking to determine where they fell on this list, because I don't think that really could correlate too much. I wanted to be as unbiased as possible. So I didn't even look at the Class 3A preseason rankings when making this list. Nevertheless, though, let's get on to our honorable mentions. Now, these are in no particular order, and these are teams that just didn't make it inside my top 10. Now, another person could have these teams in the top 10. I could totally see an argument for many of these teams, many of these 5 teams being inside someone else's top 10, but they just were not in mine. So please keep that into account. This is not a bad thing to be on our honorable mention. I want to give as many teams love as possible. And going through 3A, there are so many teams that bring back a lot of really good pitching staffs that I wanted to give some love to. So here are my 5 honorable mentions, Class 3A pitching staffs this season. Here we go. We got 5 of them right here. I'll start going through them. Honorable mention, Western Dubuque, the state champs. I got to give them some love. Only 50% of their innings return, which, is pretty solid. It's not up there in terms of the most, but still some guys returning that are going to help lead the way for the Bobcats in 2024. Clayton Lindecker and Brett Harris undoubtedly going to lead the charge. 47 and 2/3 for Harris, 52 and 2/3 for Lindecker returning on the mound. This team's returning 43% of their strikeouts. They had a team ERA of 2.89 last year. So looking for that to be right around that mark again, a 1.36 whip as a team. And Lindecker and Harris are going to be huge parts. Tanner Anderson also returns 34 innings. But besides those 3, not a single inning returner with 10 innings pitched. So it's going to be some new faces outside of those 3. But, in Western Dubuque, they're going to have arms ready to roll. My next honorable mention is ADM. Now, really wanted ADM inside the top 10. I love what they bring back. Their top 2, Grant Jansen, Grant Richnowski. If you didn't listen to High and Tight 2 weeks ago, we talked about ADM. We talked about these 2 Grants. They're going to be studs. 37 1/3 and 39 1/3 for both the Grants. These guys are going to be a problem in the Raccoon River. Both of them with ERAs below 2. Both of them with ERAs at or below 1. Whip, I should say. This ADM team last year had a team ERA of 2.15. which is incredible. They had an incredible year. They were 23-9, only 44% of their innings returned, though, from 2023. And Richnowski and Jansen are going to be carrying a load. Outside of that, only 2 returners, and those were 12 and 7 innings each. So going to be some new faces outside of those 2 for ADM, but Richnowski and Jansen are going to be eating a lot of innings and leading the way for this ADM staff that I'm excited to follow in 2024. My next honorable mention is Grinnell. Now, these guys bring back a platoon of arms. Looks like 7, 8, 9 guys. The list is really long. I can't even count off the top of my head. Led by Cole Blackford. 64 innings returning for Grinnell. 57 strikeouts, ERA of 1.86, and a whip of 1.13. Now, Grinnell as a team had an ERA right around 3 last year. Expect that to be the same, with 70% of their innings returning. Excited to follow Grinnell last year. They were 20 and 16. They competed in a lot of games. 61% of their strikeouts are back, and it looks like they got 4 guys returning 20-plus innings pitched from last year. And Camden Harms, Brooks Vosberg, both those guys freshmen this year, and Carson Penyich. So looking forward to Grinnell. They bring back a lot of pieces again. 70% of Grinnell's innings are back. My next honorable mention is Sergeant Bluff Luton, 28-15 last year for the Warriors, and they return 56% of their innings pitched from last year, led by Braden Kerr and Tanner Clean. 49 and a third and 54 innings for each of those guys, respectively, both with really good ERAs and whips right around 1.3. Sergeant Bluff Luton's team ERA last year was 2.61, and their whip was 1.35. Expect that to be right around the same as they return. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys is what they return with innings experience from last year. All of them were sophomores, so they're going to have a loaded junior class this year, full of arms, ready to contribute. 4 guys returning 25 innings or more for Sergeant Bluff Luton, a team that's always scrappy, always competing, excited to follow them. My final honorable mention is Knoxville, the Panthers. Yes, 58 innings return for a Knoxville team that went 34-4 last year. They're going to be led by freshman phenom Lincoln Norris. He was on our freshman phenom list, ranked inside the top 10, 39 innings last year at 1.62 ERA, and a whip right at 1 for Norris. Luke Spauer and Kobe Higginbotham are both guys that you need to keep an eye on. Both returned 36 innings or more. This Knoxville team has a trio of 3 guys returning 36 or more innings. None of them lost a game last year. 7-0 for Higginbotham on the mound, 6-0 for Spauer, and 6-0 for Lincoln Norris. So Knoxville, I know a lot of people are talking about what they lost because they did lose a lot in Kingery and Leisure, but this team's also returning some big pieces, and all 3 of those guys that I just mentioned were underclassmen last year. So Higginbotham and Spauer are set to be juniors this year, leading the way, along with Norris, a freshman. So excited, as always, to follow Knoxville. I was at multiple games of theirs last year, and I'm excited to go out and catch them again this summer. So those are my 5 honorable mentions for Class 3A. Let's get right into the top 10. We got 10 teams to break down. Any team inside the top 10 or even honorable mention or sleepers, coaches, players watching this, if you want a graphic for your team's social media, reach out to me, DM IA Baseball on Instagram, or DM me, Cade Nissen. If you're not following me on socials, go ahead. I will gladly make graphics to help promote your team and collab with IA Baseball. It's a win-win, and I'll gladly do it. So any team inside the top 10 or any team inside this video, if you want something, reach out. I'll be glad to help you out. But let's get into it. Number 10 of our Class 3A pitching staffs in the preseason is Solen, the Spartans. 87.5% of the Spartans' innings return. Now, they were just 22-20 last year. Obviously, they play in a very tough conference in the WAMAC, but this team is returning so many contributors on the mound, and all of them really good last year. They returned 4 guys with 35 or more innings. Jackson Link, Brick Cabela. Brick is just an incredible first name, by the way. Caden Hansen and Vince Steinbreck. All of them 35 or more innings. All of them ERAs below 3.5-ish. All of them whips around 1.5 or below. This team had an ERA of 3.58 last year and a whip of 1.59. I expect that to go lower, honestly. I think this team is going to be even better with all these guys returning. 87% of the innings returned, like I said, 85% of the strikeouts. So this team is just locked and loaded, ready to go. We always talk about how well they go on the base paths, how well their offense is, but I think the pitching for Solen this year could be the difference maker. And even outside of those 4 guys that returned 35 innings, 2 more returned 20 plus in Cole Farnsworth and Tyson Wheeler. So Solen, I'm buying this team preseason. I love where they're at, and honestly, I don't even know where they're at in the preseason team rankings, but I'm assuming they're pretty high. So that's the fun thing, is I did not look at the preseason team rankings when I did this. I wanted this to just be, my tunneled view. I didn't want any other numbers factoring in. So hopping to number 9, I know this team isn't preseason ranked, but I'm really high on them personally. It is Benton Ferrar at number 9. Yes, 93% of the innings returned for a Blue Jay team that went 24-14 last year, and that's including playing in a really deep Raccoon River. There's so many good Raccoon River teams. But Benton Ferrar is a team I'm really high on. They return a ton of guys. They had a team ERA of 2.56 last year and a whip of 1.28. Now, I know they kind of bowed out of the playoffs a little earlier than they probably would have liked, and I think that's why they're not getting a ton of pub. this preseason, but I'm buying the Blue Jays. They returned a ton of guys. I know Reed Faltzgraff got hurt during football season. I'm not sure if he's even playing baseball this summer because of that injury, but even if he isn't, I'm still really high on this team. Hudson McIntosh, he's the innings returner, 39 and third and a 2.67 ERA. Next is Faltzgraff, who brings back 37 innings. But even outside of that, you got David Richardson returning 34 innings, Will Potabom returning 29, Cole Miller brings back 27, and Jordan Ryle brings back 25. So all of these guys bringing back tons of innings. The Blue Jays are going to have plenty of arms to throw out there in a loaded Raccoon River that just tests you every single night. So again, Bondurant, 93% of their innings are back, 94% of their strikeouts are back. This team's ready to roll, and I expect them to be competing at a high level inside one of the best conferences in Class 3A. Moving on to number 8, I have the Xavier Saints right here at number 8. 69% of the innings returned for Xavier, including 2 guys who return 47 or more innings. That is an extremely great luxury to have. Tate Proskovich and Andrew Hamlet are going to be leading the way. Those are the 2 guys with those 47 or more innings. Proskovich was incredible last year. 48 Ks on 47 innings, a 1.18 ERA, and a 1.06 WHIP. He was a sophomore. He's got to look out for. They had a team ERA below 3 last year and a team WHIP of 1.4. And when you're returning this many innings, I mean that number is bound to be right around there or even lower. It was a team that was below 500 last year. They play a high level of competition as we've talked about. So Xavier, a team I'm really high on. Dominic D'Amico, he also returns 26 and 2/3 for Xavier. So they find themselves at number 8 in my preseason Class 3A pitching staffs to watch. Heading on to number 7, Spencer, quarterfinalist last year, and another team that's not getting talked about a ton this offseason, but I really like what they bring back. 78% of their innings return, led by Jackson Hefner. He threw 51 in the third last year, ERA of 1.5 and a WHIP of 1.27. He will be the ace at the front of this rotation. They also return 2 other guys who bring back 30 or more innings, and Aiden Severson and George Lawson. So really excited to follow this Spencer team that was 23 and 8, really good last year. They had a team ERA of 2.1 and a team WHIP of 1.3, which is up there with the best of them in Class 3A. So Spencer, again, not a lot of people talking about Spencer, nevertheless, but I really like what this team brings back, and super excited to follow the Tigers this summer. Heading on to number 6, just outside the top 5, is another Raccoon River foe. It is the Ballard Bombers. We talked about this team on our Who's Underrated segment in High and Tight last week, so if you haven't watched that, go check that out. 21 and 11 last year for Ballard. Qualified for state, obviously a huge achievement, and 72% of their innings return, led by Eli Rouse. We talked about him. 54 innings for him, 80 strikeouts, and a 2.46 ERA. This Ballard team had a team ERA of 2.12, which I believe might be up there with the best one. It's definitely top 5 in Class 3A. So Ballard obviously was incredible on the mound last year, a team WHIP of 1.08, which is microscopic. They also returned Miles Mudd and Owen Greco, 2 other guys who return 34 or more innings. So those 3 in Greco, Mudd, and Rouse are going to be leading the charge for Ballard in that Raccoon River Conference. We're going to see some great pitching matchups all summer long in that conference. Outside of those 3, though, not a single guy returns 10 innings. So they're going to need some contributors outside of Greco, Mudd, and Rouse, but they do have 3 elite guys at the top of their staff, and that's kind of what I think of as a pitching staff. I think of your kind of 3 starters and then a lot of bullpen guys outside of that. So I love those 3 starters that Ballard has, and it will be able to roll out every single week. Hopping into our top 5, though, I have Central DeWitt at number 5. I like all these teams inside the top 5. You could mismatch them all. Even in teams inside the top 10, you could really mismatch them. But I found the Sabres at number 5. 90% of the innings returned for a team that won 26 games last year, led by Kyle Bixby, who returns 47 in the third. I mean, they return, I got to count this because it's so many. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They returned 7 guys who threw 20 or more innings last year. 3 of them threw 34 or more. James Adams and Grant Gregoire also threw 34 or more innings for them. This team had an ERA of 4.15, which is a little high, but I just love what they bring back. I think that's going to drop to the mid-3s. They had a WHIP of 1.64. I mean, this team we talk about a lot offensively. They lead in almost every single offensive category. They have multiple guys inside the top 10 in Class 3A who are returning. So, the offense is going to produce for Central DeWitt, but I really like what the pitching staff brings back, and I think that's going to lead to them taking a huge step this season and really, really competing again. 26-15 last year, and a lot of seniors. All 7 of the guys returning 20 or more innings last year were juniors. They're going to be a senior-heavy team. They're going to be wanting to make a push for that state tournament as a senior class. So excited to follow the Sabres. I'm really, really high on them this offseason. At number 4, again, all these could be switched around. I had a really tough time for this video picking where to slot all these teams. I have the Titans of Lewis Central. 75% of the innings return for a Hawkeye 10 team that's always competing at the top of that conference, led by Luke Waltman and Brady Hetzel. Both those guys threw 35 or more innings. Both of them were undefeated, respectively, on the mound. 6-0 for Hetzel and 7-0 for Waltman. Hetzel is a guy that's not really talked about. He had 35 innings, 37 Ks, and an ERA of 1.37 and a WHIP of 0.79, which is extremely, extremely low. Luke Waltman, obviously, we've talked about him before. He returns 42 2/3. He struck out 50 and had an ERA of 3.12. This team had an ERA of 2.4 and a WHIP of 1.18, which is really, really low for a solid Hawkeye 10 conference they play in. They also returned 3 other guys with 25 or more innings, and Ethan Aikenbach, TJ Nettles, and Gavin Goldsberry. So I saw this Lewis Central team in person last year. Really liked how they played, really liked how they gelled, and I think it's going to be a same story this year with 3/4 of their innings returning. So Lewis Central, they find themselves at number 4 preseason in my Class 3A pitching staffs to watch. At number 3, not a team I was really expecting to be this high, but man, when I looked at the numbers, I really like what this team brings back on the mound. It is Bishop Heelan. I could have slotted them even higher, to be honest. I think they easily could be top 2. The Crusaders last year, 27-13, and they return 93% of their innings, including 3 guys that return 48 or more innings. That is a great luxury to have. We're going to be seeing these guys' names all year long. Connor Sitzman, Caleb Lefevre, and Jaron Bleeker. All 3 of those guys threw 48 innings last year. All of them ERAs 2 or below, WHIPs of 1 or below. Bleeker was incredible. 51 1/3, 64 Ks, an ERA of 0.68 and a WHIP of 0.60. Bishop Heelan last year had a team ERA of 1.78, which is incredible. That's among the elite in Class 3A, and that's why they find themselves here at number 3. They return so many of their pieces from last year. Outside of those 3 guys who returned 48 innings, you also return 2 others who returned 28 or more innings, and Raider Erickson and Hunter Wahab. They have 3 guys that won 5 or more games last year. Again, this team was 27-13 last year, and I expect them to make a huge jump. I'm super high on Bishop Heelan, and hopefully I can get out to Western Iowa and watch the Crusaders in action in person. Hopping into our number 2 team, though, if you're following along, we got 2 teams left who are pretty obvious, who have not been stated. And at number 2, I have North Polk. Now, only 66% of the innings returned from last year. When you got a 1-2 punch like Hunter Cook and Reese Rogge, I couldn't help but put them this high. Rogge and Cook, we've talked about them so many, so I'm not going to talk about them too much. Combined for 200 Ks last year. They both had ERAs of 1.16 or lower, and both had WHIPs at or below 0.9. So no one was getting on base on these guys. They returned 2 other guys, in Ethan Sanger and Drew Owen, who returned 17 and 14 innings respectively. They're going to need a few guys to step up that we don't know about yet outside of these 4, because you can't pitch a whole season with just 4 guys. But their top is going to compete with everybody, and they probably have the best 1-2 punch in the entire state of Iowa in terms of pitching. So that's why North Polk finds themselves at number 2. The only reason they weren't number 1 is just because the other team returns a little bit more. But again, North Polk last year, team ERA of 1.59 and a team WHIP of 1.09. So microscopic for North Polk. I'm pretty sure they led Class 3A in that category pretty easily. So they find themselves at number 2 in my Class 3A preseason pitching staffs. At number 1, though, if you've been following along and you're a Marion fan, you're here at number 1. I didn't think I was going to have them at number 1 when I went into making my Class 3A preseason top pitching staffs. I knew Marion was going to be up there, but when I looked, I just couldn't help but put them at number 1. They return 6 guys with 20 or more innings from last year. They're going to be led at the top of their lineup by 3 guys who returned 30 or more: Andrew Amon, Austin Goodrich, and Isaac Scott. These 3 were incredible last year. Again, all of them returning 30 innings or more. I mean, they combined to go 11-1 on the mound. All of them ERAs really respectable. All of them whips low, 1.2 or lower. They had a team ERA of 2.89 last year and a team whip of 1.39. 1.35, sorry. Again, 87 of their innings return, 80% of their strikeouts. This team is returning a ton of experience. They were 30-7 last year. They made it to the state tournament, obviously fell in the quarterfinals to Carlisle. You know they're going to be hungry to go on another run. And Isaac Scott, Austin Goodrich, Andrew Amon, all of them returning 30 innings are going to be huge helps. They returned 4 others outside of that threw 19 or more innings: Zach Huey, Peyton Hodges, Isaiah Scott, and Coda Johnson. So Marion is just going to be deep up and down the board in terms of pitching staff. You know the offense is going to produce as well for the Wolves. So Marion, super high on them. They are my preseason #1 pitching staff to look out for in Class 3A. And that's all I got. I hope you guys enjoyed. Be sure to leave a comment whether you agree, disagree. I mean, I make this list that we can have these conversations. You know, it's not slouting. It's not dropping anyone lower. It's not belittling anybody. It's for the pure entertainment purpose. We're trying to do something that others don't, and I don't think many are doing this type of stuff. So excited to have these conversations with you guys. Be sure to drop a comment whether you agree, disagree. We're used to it. We love having those conversations. And if I didn't mention your team and you think you're going to be pretty scrappy, drop a comments, let us know, because I want to have my eyes peeled for the guys that I need to. So thanks everybody for watching. I think Andrew's working on Class 3A offenses as well, so be sure to look for that early this week. And that's it. I'm going to sign off. I'm going to start working on Class 2A. See you guys.